After we finished building our greenhouse a couple of months ago, we didn't get a chance to rest. We are farming as a business and we had just made a serious investment into this Quinta Africa 504 greenhouse, as you saw on our last video. The only way for us to start earning some ROI was to grow our first crop of high-value vegetables in it. We needed to get on with it, but we couldn't just stumble along in a hurry and figure things out later. In Zambia, one of the most common expressions we use is one that says, "Ifintu ni bwangu," and it basically means things must be done quickly. That can be a good thing sometimes, but not when it comes to successfully farming high-value vegetables in a greenhouse. We needed to take some time to plan what we were going to grow and how we were going to grow it. And then we needed to prepare the greenhouse for the planting of the crop. This video is all about how Mondo Farms gets things ready for a beautiful crop of vegetables like this. We're going to start by looking at greenhouse farming and why Mondo Farms is getting into it. And then we'll take you through all of the steps that we take to get the ground ready and the soil ready for planting. Greenhouse farming always involves irrigation, and at the end of the video we'll be looking at how we set up our drip irrigation system in the greenhouse. I'm very excited because this is the first time that we're using a new high-tech and advanced drip tape system from Rivulis, and we'll be taking a look at what makes it so special. If you are someone who is in Africa farming high-value vegetables in the greenhouse, or you are still at the planning and research stage, then this video has been made especially for you. Stay with us. Greetings from the farm. I hope you're well. It's so good to have you back with us again here on the Mondo Farms channel. My name is Chisha Folotia, and I'm standing inside our brand new greenhouse at Wezi, which is the central area of Kimberley Farm. Now, this is the second agricultural enterprise that we are developing on the outskirts of Chongwe. So I would say we are about 35 or so kilometers east of Lusaka, the capital city of Zambia. For those who don't know, Zambia is a beautiful and peaceful country in South Central Africa. We are marking 60 years of independence from Britain this month, and most of us have mixed feelings about how things have gone for our nation since 1964. Let's just say that my home country is still very much a work in progress. We have so much potential, and we have heard so many plans and so many promises from our leaders, past and present. But this year, it's all about the panels. Due to the power crisis, Zambians have had to install a whole bunch of solar panels, inverters, batteries, and all we talk about these days is how many kilowatt hours do you have? The first crop in our new greenhouse is a demo crop made up of 4 varieties of long cucumber and 2 varieties of sweet melon in the row at the end. These are all Rijkswaan hybrid varieties that we are growing in collaboration with Holland Greentech, a company that Mondo Farms has been working with since 2021. We're very proud of our close working relationship with Holland Greentech, and if you watched some of our videos before, you'll have seen us mention and feature them quite regularly. They supplied and constructed this greenhouse, which we featured in a video last month. Holland Greentech is now working with us to produce this series of videos about greenhouse farming in 2024. There's going to be 4 videos in the series, and each one will cover a crucial phase during the crop production process of a greenhouse. As I said in the intro, this first one is all about the planning and the preparations of the greenhouse to plant our first crop, how we got started. In the next video, we'll show you how we planted the seeds and talk a little bit about Rijkswaan and their varieties of long cucumber. The third one will be all about how we take care of the crop as it starts to grow, and then how and why we trellis it like this. Then finally, in part 4, we'll share the harvest process as we take the cucumbers out of here and prepare them for the market. This series of greenhouse farming videos is one of the most ambitious, one of the most comprehensive projects we've ever done here on the Mondo Farms channel. We are thinking of it as one long, extended crop story with a lot more detail than would have ever been able to fit into just one video. We covered the benefits of greenhouse farming and the advantages that it has over open field farming in detail in our previous videos on the channel, which I hope you've seen. We'll put a link to the greenhouse video in the description that you can click later. In that video, we shared how Mondo Farms has been on a journey since 2020 that is seeing us develop 2 projects from scratch as we plan to become a large-scale producer of vegetables for our local Zambian market. Like most of Africa, Zambia has a population that is rapidly growing. In our case, each and every year, we are finding ourselves with 500,000 more mouths to feed. Our local food production capacity is something of a mixed picture. There's a lot of emphasis on producing starch and many programs and assistance towards capacity building for growing maize, for growing soya beans, sometimes even for growing wheat, and we tend to be reasonably self-sufficient when things are right, and we can actually even export. But when it comes to vegetables and fruits, there's still quite a long way to go. Every year, Zambia is importing about $20 million worth of vegetables and fruits into our country to meet the demand. I've been involved in various businesses for the past 3 decades, and we've started several things from scratch. And when we do something like that, we've learned that it's better to have a strategy that focuses on one business sector, one type of business activity at a time. I don't believe that a brand new business that is still being invested in can succeed in doing each and everything. And I believe that it's better to start one thing, grow your capacity, learn your lessons, make it self-sustaining before you move on to the next thing. When I started Mondo Farms, I decided to get into crop farming. And within crop farming, I decided to focus on vegetable farming. So for the past 4 and a bit years, we have been trying our hand at different types of vegetables. We've grown onions, we've grown this, we've grown that. But we have finally come to realize that the area of vegetable farming that is most viable for us and is starting to make a little bit of sense for us is what they call high-value vegetables. What are high-value vegetables? There are things like, in the Zambian context, of course, things like sweet pepper, your reds and your yellows. There are things like sweet melon, and there are things like the long cucumbers that we have in this greenhouse. The best place to grow high-value vegetables is in protected growing structures like shade houses and greenhouses. Mondo Farms has been investing in such structures since 2021 when we put up our first shade houses at Winterthorn. Over the years, we have increased the number and scope of the structures, and we have now moved on to the next level with our first greenhouse. It will increase our high-value vegetable production capacity by allowing us to grow more throughout the year and to give us more efficiency and more effectiveness while using less resources. Let's talk about the planning process. Now, most plans start with a general idea and direction. For a crop farmers like ourselves, we've got to decide which crops do we want to grow. Where are we going to grow them? When are we going to grow them? And how are we going to grow them? In this particular case, we had already arranged with Holland Greentech to grow this demo crop of long cucumber and sweet melon inside the new greenhouse after it was completed. When Holland Greentech had finished the construction of the greenhouse and they came to hand over the structure, we were already planning the crop that will be planted in the coming weeks. This was the very early planning stage, and we talked about things like the number of beds that we could fit into this Quinta Africa 14 meters by 36 greenhouse, and the length and the width of the beds. We calculated that the width of the greenhouse would allow us to have 8 beds and that we would leave 1 meter around the edges. And then we were going to leave 2 meters at the entrance area, so that would allow us to come in, circulate, leave our materials and our equipment, and also be able to be used for that all-important process of harvesting. At the other end, where the water was coming in for the irrigation, we decided to leave a 1.5 meters to allow for all the piping. And that gives us 32.5 meter long beds. We make our beds about 50 centimeters wide, and then we leave this space here, which is about 1.5 meters. Someone might be asking, why leave all of this space? Why not cram in more and more plants into this greenhouse, as many as possible? Well, there's 3 main reasons why we arrange our plants for most of our high-value vegetable crops in this manner. Number 1, it gives us this room to walk through. Our workers are coming in here, they are weeding, they are pruning, they are spraying, and of course they are harvesting. And we want them to be carrying a nice crate freely and easily through the pathways. The other reason we leave our spacing like this is that it then allows for more air circulation. When plants are too crammed together, you don't get enough air circulation, and that is a breeding ground, I'm telling you, for diseases, especially when things get humid. The last reason is that it also allows the plants enough space to grow and to express themselves. Look at this cucumber leaf. This is quite big. So each of these plants, and there's thousands of them in here, is quite a beast. And so they need enough room to grow. We had decided to grow our crops directly into the ground. Now, we could have chosen to go for growing bags, and these are those big bags that you've seen, and they're full of growing media, cocoa peat, soil, and maybe some stones at the bottom for drainage. It can get quite complicated, but these are mostly used in instances where the farmer or the gardener has been growing crops in the same greenhouse for quite some time, and then the soil becomes depleted. They are also used where the soil in the greenhouse or the shade house has got known soil disease challenges. We don't even want to talk about those, do we? And thirdly, it's also used where they need to meet certain phytosanitary standards for export or for the local market. In our case, we had none of those complications, and we had a brand new greenhouse with excellent soil that we could grow our crops directly into the ground. The construction process of the greenhouse had involved bringing in things like scaffolds and ladders and other machinery, and having lots of heavy boots moving around, so the ground was quite compacted. So before we could start making the beds, we had to bring in water to wet and loosen the soil. And then the team started to make the fertility trenches. Now, what's a fertility trench? It is a deep furrow that is filled with layers of soil, nutrients, organic materials, and other things in order to increase the fertility of the soil, increase the water holding capacity, provide better aeration, drainage, and allow for easy root penetration. Remember that the crop we are going to be planting would be in the greenhouse for 6 to 9 months, maybe even close to a year. So it needs a good place for the roots to establish a firm foundation. We make our fertility trenches about 30 centimeters wide and 15 centimeters deep.
Wezi penetista fraud compost eneachuka ku kondwani.
And then we fill the fertility trenches with some compost. That is the dark organic material you can see here. By the way, we make our own compost here at Mondo Farms throughout the year in a process that has been shared on our previous video. It's another part of our long-term planning for continuous production of vegetables. We try to fill the fertility trenches back up to ground level, but that is if we have enough compost available. This is farming in the real world after all, so sometimes we have to be economical and make it stretch. The minimum desired depth of the compost in the fertility trench is at least 10 centimeters. The next stage is to raise the beds, which is done by backfilling over the fertility trenches and then raising up the soil from the sides up to about 15 centimeters above the ground. By the way, on our farms, our beds are usually called contridges by our team. This is a term that was first used by our original farm supervisor, Pythias, and the name has kind of stuck. Once the beds have been raised, we then shape and we smooth them. This involves using rakes to make the tops flat and to bring the soil to a fine tilth. So I've been hearing this term fine tilth ever since I started farming. It's one of those things that you'll find in farming. You need to learn certain technical terms and what exactly do they mean. Fortunately, the easiest way to find out what something means is to go onto a search engine like Google and find out what it means. So I did that last night as I was preparing for the script for this video. What on earth is a fine tilth from the Vegetable Patch Diaries? It says, preparing a fine tilth means turning your rocky, lumpy, stony soil into something closer to large breadcrumbs than clay-filled boulders. What is meant by fine tilth? A tilth is a word that describes the prepared soil surface. A rough tilth is created by digging, and a fine tilth is created by raking and leveling the soil ready for sowing seeds. Achieving a fine tilth is quite a process, and sometimes we've got to get a little bit physical.
So, making progress here, we continue ramming or breaking the cloth. In other words, we call this pulverizing. Then as this team is doing this, there's another one collecting stones, which we don't need from here. And you can see a load full of stones in this wheelbarrow. And he's taking them outside so that this space only consists of soil.
So with the bed making almost done, it was now time to start setting up the irrigation system. Here at Mondo Farms, we choose to use drip irrigation for most of our crops. We've been doing it for years and we have quite a lot of capacity and experience with it. The benefits of drip irrigation are plenty, and I could go deeper into them, but that would take up a whole video. And we already did a detailed video about drip irrigation, which you can watch on our channel a little bit later. When growing high-value crops in a greenhouse, most farmers and growers will go for drip irrigation. There are a lot of different types of drip irrigation available on the market. If you go out there and ask with your agro dealers and other places, you will find lots of types of drip irrigation, different manufacturers in different companies, different capacities and drip rates and flow rates, etc. And you will also find different prices. Last year, Holland Greentech introduced Mondo Farms to a type of drip irrigation that they distribute across Africa. It's made by a company called Rivulis. Rivulis is a global leader in providing micro-irrigation solutions and innovations. Its history goes back 80 years, and they offer the broadest portfolio in the market, featuring the industry's most recognized products. According to their website, Rivulis works with over 6,000 partners and 7,000 growers worldwide to provide full turnkey micro-irrigation solutions for any and all grower needs, from the individual grower to large corporate plantations in the agriculture, horticulture, greenhouse, and mining industries. One of their leading brands of drip irrigation is called T-Tape, and it's been around since 1977. Yes, that's the year that people in my generation were first introduced to Star Wars. So for almost 50 years, growers around the globe have been relying on T-Tape for its durability, reliability, and unparalleled performance. As Mondo Farms, we've been loving the T-Tape since we started using it last year, and we've seen the difference between T-Tape and other ordinary brands of drip irrigation. But for this demo project, Holland Greentech has brought us yet another drip irrigation product that they also have available. It's called D2000 and it has some improved features than the T-tape, including thicker walls, which may give it more longevity and a higher emission rate. It also works well on gravity-fed setups like ours. The team was excited to receive this new type of drip tape and then went into laying it out onto the beds in the greenhouse.
So we get started with the connections here. So we've laid down the 40mm poly pipe, and we have our inlet pipe coming in as a 50. Then on here we have a reducing socket. So that reduces from 50 to 40 millimeters. Then we have a control valve. Then from here we have the T. One goes east, the other one goes west. And now he has to do this connection first before we start doing the hole punching and we start putting up the connectors. So this is Mr. Piri, our plumber here at Kimberley Farm. And he does all the plumbing works. So this is the progress so far. The eastern side has been completed with the installations, and now we're working through the western side. So he only has 3 beds left. Then what happens is after that we flush the system. So these pieces of poly that are falling into the pipe will be flushed out on the ends. Then after that we will install what we call the poly end caps at the far end there, and the other one on the eastern side. So as he's doing this, the other guys started unrolling the drip tape. So it will come all the way, and we start cutting according to pieces and installing. Then hapa kangena muma grooves yonse ya tatu kagwira. So hapa you can't push it back, or the pressure man singa pushing hapa. So what we do now is get the axle at the far end kujamanje, you run back, you cut. So what we can do is enda nayo kuja futi overpassile, you make it straight. Then we cut na allowance yobo folding ilako drip tapes pofaka end cap. Okay. So make sure it's on top of the bed. So before cutting, we have to make sure that it lies on top of the bed so that dimensions don't deceive us. Papi, you pushing in ngale line palasta po ngale straight. So now he's going again for the second line of tape on the same bed. So do your connection again, Apo. So roll it back, chipombe and footy. Move back, chipombe and hapa ya kwenda pa bedi, connect it. So once yankala connected kuja hapa at 10 cm same length nae we cut. So now that we've laid the tapes, what's left now is the installation of the end caps. So these are the stoppers, the new Rivulis stoppers for these D2000 tapes. So how we install them is Very simple. So it goes in here. Then once that is done, you hold it here. Then you push the other tape on the other end, the remaining piece. Then you pull it. So they're able to lock, and looking at the thickness of the tape, no water will be able to pass through here at the end. So this is locked. Then we'll have something that will hold this piece at the end so that it doesn't move. Now that the main lateral line has been flashed and the drips have been flashed, we've started now irrigating our beds. So this is now the D2000 in action. You can see how it's emitting water through these emitters. So what Joseph now is doing is turning them upside down. Those that are facing down, the emitters should face up, so that it's easy for us to notice which one is not emitting when you can see the water trickle down. An up close look. So he's going in, turning them line by line. You can see how wet the beds are becoming now.
Another important component of our irrigation system is having something that will allow us to inject soluble fertilizers and other important liquids straight into the drip system and have it carried over to the crops while we are irrigating. In our case, we use something like this simple Venturi injector in order to achieve the fertigation.
So the inlet comes in. There's a reducing saddle clamp here, and there's a control valve on a 50mm poly pipe. And it comes all the way here to this Venturi injector where we connect our suction pipe that goes into our container of chemicals, and then goes back into the main line, then the junction box, then into the greenhouse.
So we were now at an important stage where we were basically ready to go ahead and plant the seeds. But before we could do that, there was one more important process that we needed to go through. And this is all about treating the soil to protect the crops that we were about to plant. Now, what are we protecting it from? Number one is soil diseases that might be found there in the soil. Number two, it's insect pests that could also be lurking within the soil, waiting for our beautiful new seeds to germinate and seedlings, and they come along and they do nom, 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 nom. They chomp away and destroy our yields. Soil treatment is a very important component of planning for high-value crops, and quite a little bit of effort goes into it.
So here in the Wezi greenhouse, we start the process of doing soil protection. So that's the application of fungicides and insecticides. So our drips are open and you can see them emitting water. The beds are wet and well moist. So now we're going to connect our bucket to the Venturi injector so that we start fertigating our chemicals here. So we can see now the mix being pushed into the Venturi injector. You can see on the valve here the gauge, how it's spinning. It's being sucked into the injector and into the drippers. So now here in the greenhouse, we're looking at the mix now being fertigated and pushed out through the drips from the Venturi injector. We can see a change of color. The water has changed from its normal transparent color to a darker color of brown as the chemical is being fertigated. So as the Venturi is working here, we've also started with the cover drench that's on the ground with the watering can. So the first few lines have been covered, and now the first 4 will be finished. Then we'll also do the middle part. So this is a mixture of new grow, and we're drenching it as full cover. So now the next mixture is Recharge, which is an insecticide that we're going to be drenching via Venturi. So we're doing the mixing here, and you can see the solution color is different from New Grow. This one is whitish or milkish in color. So that's the next thing that we'll start applying. So he's mixing vigorously so that the mix is fine. Then now we can put our suction hose here. Move it closer. Then it starts doing its work. Now that we finished drenching New Grow and we started drenching the Recharge, so this is the Recharge now being emitted in the drips. You can see it. And there's now the full cover spray with the can that's drenching the Recharge. So all this part needs to be drenched with an insecticide so that as the place continues to get moist with the irrigation, we don't have pests moving from underneath the soil to where our plants will be planted in the beds.
So as you've seen, quite a lot of work goes into the preliminary stages. First of all, we planned the crop with figuring out the spacing, number of beds, etc. And then we started preparing the beds with the fertility trenching filled with compost, and then we raise up the beds. Finally, we then installed the drip irrigation system using our brand new thing that we're getting used to now called the Rivulis D2000. And then the final stage was to use the Venturi injector to apply the crop protection chemicals. We're now ready to plant the crop, and we're going to share the story of how we do that in part 2 of our greenhouse farming video series 2024. And you can watch that one by clicking on this link right here. I'll see you soon in this one.